Greetings and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is, of course, your host LL, and today we're going to be doing a bit of an analytical video on Cardano as previously promised, and we're going to be taking a look into the future viability of Cardano as a smart contract blockchain, comparing it to Ethereum and some of the other top smart contract blockchains out there. Now, this is not going to be a full deep dive into absolutely everything that Cardano is working in terms of updates, solutions, or their general roadmap here. This is just going to be a supplementary video to already existing publishes and articles and other videos about talking about Cardano scalability. But let's get started without further ado by talking about the strengths of Cardano. What are the things that people are proud about being a Cardano fan, and what are the real things that Cardano has done really well? And obviously the Cardano fans already know the answer to that, and that is the decentralization aspect. So when we actually look into the pool distribution, the biggest staking groups right now, and these are snapshots taken today, it is rather decentralized. I mean, the biggest one is single pool operators, which is a very good thing, obviously. So in de facto, the largest one is Binance at 11%. Now, we have to remember that Cardano doesn't own 11% of the whole supply. That is customers' funds mostly. The real share that they might own, I'm not sure what is exactly that number. But fundamentally, this being technically the biggest number here, it's not really that large when we actually compare it to the Bitcoin's pool distribution, which is basically you have these 5 pools here, which basically have a pretty big share out of everything, and then it's really fractionalized to very, very small ones. But fundamentally, there are kind of like 5 big pools on Bitcoin, and this is obviously a lot worse with a lot of other proof of work coins and other proof of stake systems out there, especially Ethereum right now in its infancy. But to be fair, it's been like a week since the merger event, and I do actually believe that Ethereum will get a bit more decentralized as it is from its current state at least. Now, going back into the staking here, I mean, this has gone a lot better as time goes by, and one of the reasons why this has become more and more decentralized is due to the fact of the design of the Cardano system, which basically penalizes pools which have too much staked ADA on the pools. So the RYI is going to be going much smaller as more people basically pull Cardano into it. Sadly, this is not a model that a lot of other proof of stake models actually follow out there, because this is the best way to basically prevent from one pool basically getting a huge market share of all staked coin. And hopefully in the future, things like Ethereum, Tezos, or any Cosmos chain, all of them are going to be adapting some type of a similar model, which is going to be slashing or having these saturation fees on pools that have too much of coins delegated to them. This is basically the best way to combat, in proof of stake model, the actual centralization. So it's really when people a lot of talk about like, oh, proof of stake is inherently centralized system because rich get richer. But as you can see, you can put things in the design of it to make it fundamentally disincentivized to have these major large pools. But that's kind of like the best part about it. But that obviously gets us into the actual staking return here. So 71.65% of all Cardano is currently staked. And I think there might be some people holding Cardano on the older Cardano wallets which are not able to basically stake, which might be one of that reason. I don't know how big of a percentage that is. And then there's probably some exchanges who might have not done any staking whatsoever. But fundamentally, like when we're looking into the adjusted reward in terms of the inflation, it doesn't actually look that good. Now, we're going to be talking about inflation and deflation a bit later on in this video, but something that I do want to talk about here is that there is an inherent problem with these staking proof of stake models, in that most of them seem to be giving out anywhere from roughly to 6.5% to 14% annual reward rate. So if we put $1,000 right now on Cardano, we probably would have 1,079 in 52 weeks based on that, you know, the dollar value of the current Cardano. Obviously, it's going to fluctuate and everything like that. But fundamentally, like, I do think in a way the Cardano staking return right now is kind of high. I'm not sure is it going to be dropping down later on, but 8% to me is just a really good way to inflate your coin too fast. And you know, because you have to understand the context here. In the beginning, we had the masternode coins and proof of stake coins, but a lot of those masternode coins had a very, very high returns. We're talking about 200%, 1,000%, some were even 10,000%, and they became basically pyramid schemes at the core. So fundamentally, like, a lot of those proof of stake and masternode coins are really gone now, and the only one that is kind of around and relevant is Dash, and that's because they have a very low annual rate for the masternodes, which is roughly around 6%, and there's no normal staking, just proof of work with masternode, which is another reason why it has stayed around for some time. But fundamentally, like, I do want to talk about that 8% might, like, right now it seems a very normal rate, and all the established top coins have roughly around this as their number and bit above in terms of Solana and Algorand and Tron. But fundamentally, like, going on, I think this is a very, very high number. Now let's move into the recent update, which just happened in the last 24 hours. Vassal hard fork, which a lot of people were hyped about. To kind of break it down, what it basically entailed was the Plutus writing language, which has been cited by Hoskins and some other people that there's going to be now a lot more developers from the traditional Web 2 world and some other, you know, coding bases that might be more interested in now working on Cardano because they don't have to learn a new language. That's one of those things, and then there's a lot of other updates into these known as the CIPs. So generally, like, it was a very big fork. There's the reference inputs and some optimizations as well. And there was also talking about, like, the fees going a bit lower here. And there's also the Hydra stuff, which we are going to be tackling later down in this video. Now, and here's a documentation. Diffusion pipelining is basically the feature that they talk about to have a higher throughput throughout the blockchain. So it's going to be like making everything a bit faster and working more better fundamentally. But I mean, I'm going to leave this in the description down below if you want to just look into basically everything that Vassal brought over to Cardano. Now the question obviously here is this enough to basically make Cardano more popular and etc.? And so this kind of goes into which I just already like admitted. So back in 2020, Cardano made a statement that there's going to be thousands of dApps basically built on Cardano from a year from now, and that was in 2020. So in 2021 there would be 1,000 dApps. Right now I think there's roughly a bit over 100 right now, which is, I guess, okay for a new chain. I mean, chain that just started to support smart contracts, and obviously a writing language that most people are not very familiar with, because what we have to fundamentally understand is that because all the AVM chains use Solidity, it's really easy to just fork over more dApps from the existing codes and stuff like that. So you don't really need to do a lot of custom stuff. You just basically copy things over. But this was something that, you know, well, Hoskinson has, you know, he's a bit of a controversial figure, obviously, in the movement. I'm kind of mixed feels about it. He has a lot of good takes and a lot of bad takes. I think this was a kind of bad take, and it kind of backfired really a lot here in terms of the statistics, which we're going to be talking about next, because that's fundamentally what is important about every smart contract blockchain is actually the activity. With a proof of work chain like Bitcoin, it doesn't really matter how many transactions are being done per day, because that has no correlation on the value of Bitcoin. So I covered up some, or I procured a lot of data from Messari regarding Cardano. So here we have This is the year-to-date statistics for all of these. So these are using from January, start of January to this day, which is the end of September almost. Now, when we're looking into these numbers at a very close glance, you can definitely see that during January, there was a very high transaction count, almost at 200K, and then it dropped into 73K. So we almost had like 2.6 amount, 260% drop in terms of the amount of transactions. But when you look into the active accounts, that even dropped a lot more. So there was almost 300K active accounts back in January for Cardano, and now it has, swindled down very, very, very much and into a very low amount. To give you some comparisons about the active accounts, I run through all the other MSRE smart contract blockchains. Bitcoin has stayed relatively the same the whole year. Ethereum has stayed the same. Tron has gone up. And every other competitor that I was basically able to procure data for all have basically stayed the same, while as Cardano, as you can see, it has lost almost 4 or 5 times the active accounts from its very peak. And I even at here we had 230K, so it was a very steep drop. And the Vessel hard fork hasn't really exactly pumped up more users to the chain. And the active accounts, in my opinion, is probably one of the best and important metrics to determine the health of the smart contract blockchain. And you can obviously argue that what type of data is being moved and what type of transactions these people are doing. Are they claiming staking rewards? Are they interacting with dApps and etc.? So there's a lot of assumptions to be made there, but this is definitely not a good look compared to a lot of the other competition that I was basically looking in terms of the active accounts. Now, in terms of the fees, which we have to talk about, some people keep telling me that Cardano is affordable blockchain to use. And I always say, well, affordable to who? I mean, we always tend to, most of the loud voices in the blockchain movement are from first world countries and usually millionaires and rich people in general. They don't never take the aspect of somebody from the third world. And Cardano has basically marketed themselves and done a lot of partnerships in third world countries because that is one of their goals, to be one of those currencies that are going to be used in third world countries. Now, obviously, what is synonymous with third world countries is obviously poverty. People don't make as much money in third world countries as they do in first world countries or second world countries. And what we see here in the fees, and we're going to be doing a bit of a bigger breakdown here. Even when the fees have gone down from the high congestions, obviously here on the first quarter of the year, more transactions, more accounts, and obviously that translates into more fees. Right now we're sitting at 15 cents average. Now, that is roughly around what Binance Smart Chain is asking, or maybe a bit less than that. And that's not really exactly an achievement. Ethereum right now is the most expensive chain to use, followed by Bitcoin. Then it might be actually Binance Smart Chain or Cardano, and maybe Zilliqa there. So being in top 5 in most expensive chains is not a position you basically want to be in. Exactly the opposite. Actually, HBAR also has very high fees, something that I realized recently. And also the price has been going down, but I don't think price is really argument about against technology or adaptation or really about anything. But there's always a correlation that perhaps when the price goes down, less people are less interested using your chain. But then again, if there was a lot of gaming dApps or non-finance based dApps in your blockchain, maybe those users wouldn't go during the bear market or when the price actually crashes down. So that's something that I always have to think about, activity on blockchains which have a lot of games like Polygon or Wax, for example, might have still a very active blockchains altogether despite going in the bear market. Now, I got out also some fees. These are all post Vessel hard fork fees. And one of the interesting things about Cardano is that claiming the stake is actually cheaper than the normal transfer. So let's pay in mind with these numbers. So 7 cents to basically claim your ADA. And remember, we are in the bear market. These are the bear market prices. so we have to understand Cardano's valuation is 80% down from its all-time high, and also the congestion on the network has gone, what was it? We are like four times of terms of around 3 times of like the amount of transactions happening on the network. And in terms of normal transferring Cardano to another account is 8 cents right now. But when you start to interact with smart contracts, obviously those are always going to be costing more. Doing a swap on Sunday Swap costs me 10 cents, and doing a NFT price change on CNFT cost me 28 cents. So this was 0.6 ADA. And imagine like the Cardano valuation at $10. That is basically $6 for changing the price of an NFT. And that's obviously going to be higher when there's going to be more congestion. So it could be technically more than that 0.622 ADA for that transaction. But these are something that I consider fundamentally very high. And that goes into my second point, which is talking about, once again, that third world adoption. Because Cardano has partnerships in Africa. One of them is Tanzania, I believe South Africa, and then there was probably Nigeria. But like Tanzania is a really poor country. I ran in some numbers here. So this is the median incomes for rural people in Tanzania. Obviously, people in the cities are going to be making more. But obviously, when you're going to be adapting crypto, it's going to be all around, okay? So, and these are family incomes for a month. Okay, family income, not just a one person, but a family. So let's be generous here and take the $180 per month, which you're going to be paying, by the way, 8% tax on. So this is going to be like roughly around $110. Out of that $110, you are going to be paying electricity, you're going to be paying rent, and maybe there's a phone plan, which a lot of Africans use phone plans, and then there's obviously the food. Now let's assume that you would have an option to basically buy food at a supermarket with Cardano. None of these people would be willing to do that 20 cents per transaction, depending on how many times they're going to be going buying food with Cardano's blockchain, with these types of incomes. So the idea of people who are making $200 a month across Africa are not going to be paying 10 cents for making payments to anything. Like even if it's a big bill, they might be like, that's a lot of money. That's percent wise, that's a lot of money. So I think it's not really feasible right now with Cardano to basically start adapting in Africa. And that's what I've been very worried about. Like a lot of African countries, Central African government or whatever it's called, I think they also legitimized Bitcoin. Most people will be priced out from using Bitcoin to pay the pills or whatever, and that's what I'm really worried about, like having these expensive blockchains in Africa. Like I don't think most people will be willing to use these because it's going to be so expensive to transfer it first into their wallets and then just do payments from there. And even like claiming the staking rewards is obviously going to be costing, and that's also assuming they don't have like hundreds of dollars around, to even invest on anything. That's also what you have to understand. These guys have no investment money lying around, so they could get in. Maybe they could, exchange their existing money into Cardano. Who knows how many fees there is going to be in that process? But fundamentally, this idea of like launching Cardano in Africa just seems like a pipeline dream at this point. Now, something we already alluded earlier here is the deflation. And now Hoskinson has basically come out and said that basically burning tokens is equivalent to destroying someone's property, which is a very bad faith analogy. It's more like, destroying a part of like a metal equipment, and then there's going to be like some junk metal made out of that, which is going to be bringing value. It's like, bringing your car into scrapyard. So you're destroying the car, but you're getting some value out of it in the process, basically. And what I've seen this inflation craze in this particular crypto cycle is that this narrative that Bitcoin is hedged against inflation, crypto is hedged against inflation, doesn't apply. Like the idea that there's going to be a fixed supply is going to be tackling inflation is not true. sorry guys, it's just not true, and it has been proven so well during this cycle. So in my opinion right now, every blockchain should have some type of a deflation mechanism working, even it can be a small one or whatever. But the idea that even if there is a fixed supply, even Bitcoin is still, inflating 1.65% per year right now. So there's still inflation happening, and that there has to be some form of deflation to keep up the value of the tokens. Otherwise, the inflation of the coin is just going to be dropping the price down further, because people can dump because they don't have any cost associated with dumping those coins. Like with proof of work, there's a bit of an acquisition cost, which has to be, covered by waiting for the price to go up a bit more before you dump. So there's a bit of a, that's the good thing about proof of work, there's that acquisition cost. With proof of stake, there's none, and that leads into a lot of more selling than holding, sadly. And if there's no deflation in the process, well, there's not really that many incentives to hold then, okay? Unless there's some big update, on the block. But I think this Charles has a very ignorant take on deflation in general, and I think it's a wrong one. And anybody who is like a developer saying, well, will not absolutely not do any form of deflation, that's already a red signal for me. Now let's talk about the block size. So we talked about the scalability here. Now people are saying, okay, but we're just going to increase the block size, and by increasing the block size, we are going to be having lesser fees, and we can, fit more transactions into one block. And that is 100% true. And that's probably something that they need to do. The IOHK and Cardano community has basically, said it out multiple times that even if there are layer 2 solutions like Hydra, the first chain has to be scalable to a degree. And that's why they have been increasing 10% of these, 10% of all of these block sizes by time and again. So this used to be, I think, 14 kilobytes. Now it's 88. And that's probably going to be increased more. But in order to become a lot more scalable and affordable with the current metrics, you would have to do 50% at a one go to basically curve down a lot of the fees right now, or actually more than that. So increasing the block size by double to 188 probably would take the fees down to maybe 1 cent or something, which would be bearable and something that the Africans could basically sustain. Now, that's not something that they're going to be immediately doing. Remember, when you increase the block size, this is what the maxis will always tell you, by increasing the block size is going to be fundamentally reducing the amount of nodes, because as the blockchain becomes bigger, less and less nodes are able to handle it if they do not have enough space in their computer. Now, it needs to be also said that the price of space, hard drive disk space, has become more and more affordable as time has gone by. But maybe we don't necessarily see, at least I don't see at my local store, 10 terabyte hard drives. So it's still kind of moving a bit slow, building out these very massive storages. But fundamentally, it needs to be addressed that yes, this size needs to be added, and there might be some downsides to it. We don't actually have any forms of studies how much is going to be a block. If Bitcoin would increase block size to 2 MB, how many nodes would actually die off because of that change? And this kind of to show you what has happened since the kilobytes have been exceeded. So this was back in January 21st. I believe, if this source is right, this is from the Stack Exchange of Cardano, it was 16 kilobytes. Now we are at 88. And back then, Cardano blockchain was 27 gigabytes at 6.7 million blocks. And Bitcoin at that time was 439 gigabytes with 700,000 blocks. So that 25 gigabytes is very small. However, how has it increased since we have increased this kilobyte sum? So this is the statistics from Blockchair. Now we have increased roughly 1 million blocks since the last year, and we have already gone triple the blockchain size here. So If we start to ramp up, because you have to remember that Cardano blocks happen much more frequently, I think it's every 20 seconds, while with Bitcoin it's a bit more longer than that, you have to get into the situation where this blockchain size might overload very quickly. It could be next year, it could be 300 gigabytes, depending on how many, increases they're going to be doing here. So that's a fundamental thing that we have to understand, that it has increased so much under a year, 3 times the gigabytes by increasing, obviously, the block size. So yes, Cardano can scale now if they're going to be increasing more and more of that size. But at what point is it a 1 terabyte blockchain becomes too much for some people or not? Like we don't know that, but this is becoming, maybe some people can address this on the comment section below. Now, so that's my concerns about like naturally increasing the block size. And that's kind of just like the limitations of the technology in itself. Because some blockchains don't need massive block sizes because they just have like great writing and coding in the first place, which allows them to do a lot of outputs and, in terms of transactions. Now, lastly, in this video, we're going to be talking about a bit of Hydra. And Hydra is the prominent scaling solution for Cardano. This is something that I did a bit of research on here, confirmed a lot of things. And Hydra is basically similar to Lightning Network. And anybody who has looked into Lightning Network knows that it's hot garbage. It has a lot of issues. Hydra is a lot more advanced than the Lightning Network that needs to be added in. But it will have similar types of issues that Lightning will face, because at the end of the day, for those who don't know, Cardano uses UTXO model. That UTXO model is, they use eUTXO, the extended UTXO model is the name. It's an improved model of UTXO. We could call it UTXO 2.0. And in UTXO blockchains like Bitcoin, Litecoin, Monero, the first address can basically send a transaction to Samuel, it can send to Daniel and Manuel. It can send 3 transactions at the same time. But with account model, which Ethereum is using, the first transaction has to confirm first before the second transaction can be sent. So that's how the UTXO and the account model are basically different from each other. That's a very shrunken down difference between that. And that's why the transactions can fail on the account model if there's not enough gas, but in UTXO model, the transactions can't really be canceled, or they don't really fail in a similar fashion to what the account model basically has. And because of the UTXO model, it creates a lot of potential smart contract problems, because in Ethereum, here's a good example. First, you approve the token on Uniswap so you can trade it, and after the approval, you can basically trade it. So there's a line of order which has to go through first before the second action can be done. But with the UTXO, there could be a similar situation where the swap itself happens before the approval transaction happens first, because these are not happening exactly on the same order and they go in different lines and stuff like that. I mean, I'm just making it very, very bare bones here. But, because the UTX model, the way it works, it kind of makes it fundamentally kind of harder to create smart contracts, because there's a lot of permission style of stuff. Now, let's talk about what is the Hydra doing here. So this is the Cardano blockchain here, and you can think it as here is that block 1 and here's block 20 or something. And what happens is that you send from the main chain Cardano transaction into Hydra's head, and here you can have multiple people. The Lightning Network's problem is that there can only be 2 people in one of the channels. And in Cardano, they are called the Hydra heads. So there can be multiple people in one Hydra head, and they can shuffle around the money much as they want inside it. And it doesn't matter, because all of these happen on the layer 2. They don't happen on the Cardano. But once they are done shuffling around and doing whatever, it's a smart contract or trading, basically the money goes back into the main chain. Now, what is the problem here exactly, LL? Well, the issue here is that these Hydra heads are going to be opened over and over again. Like if you wanted to have like you go to the grocery store, you have to open a Hydra head channel basically for every customer basically who comes to there to buy. And every time you open and close a channel, you are going to be paying Cardano from the main net. So fundamentally what the Hydra system does, and this is the same in Bitcoin, that's why Lightning Network is so shit, because in order to open the Lightning Network channel, it has to get approved by that very, very slow mainnet Bitcoin blockchain. And all the settlements are basically done that way. So the outputs and the inputs here going in and going out are always paid on the main chain. And that's the problem, because that is always going to be levying a lot of like the transaction output off chain to back to the main chain, I mean, from the layer 2. So in an ideal situation, everything would happen on the layer 2, and you wouldn't necessarily like having Ethereum on Polygon, for example. There's not many reasons to basically shuffle it back into Ethereum from Polygon, basically. So these Hydra, channels are not like, you can't have, the way I've understood it, you can't have like a million smart contracts inside of one Hydra head. So you have to constantly open new ones and close another one in order to interact with a lot of these layer 2 things out there. So there might be some solutions that I don't see right now. I don't have the technical knowledge to go into the extreme aspects about the capability of this blockchain fundamentally. But what I'm saying here is that this idea is putting a lot of congestion on the main net, unless people are going to be keeping these Hydra head channels open for a very, very long time. Maybe there's some gaming purpose or gambling purpose, which can be like some hoops and loops, which allow you not to close the Hydra heads all constantly. But if there's going to be like cancellations and closing of these channels on a constant basis, that's just going to be creating a lot of congestion here. And this was the question that I basically asked on the on the Cardano forums, that opening and closing Hydra head cost ADA. It depends greatly on how many participants ahead and how much funds need to be distributed. So I guess if there's going to be more ADA or tokens or NFTs in a Hydra head, the fees are going to be higher. And if there's going to be multiple parties, let's say it's a poker room with 10 people or a poker tournament with 100 people, the fees can be pretty high to just open up and close these all the time. And the different versions of the protocol will cost differently. And that is obviously granted with any type of smart contract. And there's no limit how much value you can store in one Hydra head. With Bitcoin's Lightning Network, there's a limitation, like how much you can have. If you want to alter that number, you have to open a state channel again. And currently there's a limit to single UTXO per party. I'm not sure what it means in this instance. Is that like, like adding value there, like only once for the initial thing? But if, like, let's say we open a Hydra head with 25 ADA, and then we decide, oh damn, like we actually wanted to have 30, I made a misclick, then you're not able to actually do that as of right now. So you'd have to basically close down the channel, pay the fees of it, and then open a new one to have that 30 on, instead of like having a more sophisticated system, which would just allow me to add 5 extra more from 25 to 30 without having to close and open up a new Hydra head. So that's kind of my rundown about Cardano here. This is a very long video, but I just really wanted to talk about all of these aspects. So what I'm trying to say here is that there isn't like one super good fix for scaling right now for Cardano, which I could see like work really well, because there are layer 1s like Near, which have inbuilt sharding already on layer 1. Okay, like these exist, and there's going to be more of those in the future, which have sharding on the main chain. You don't need to move them on the other thing, and the main chain is already so fucking cheap, so you don't have to worry about moving it even to a layer 2, even if that was the case. So there has to be a fix where the Hydra is going to be taking out a lot of the congestion from Cardano network, and simultaneously you also have to curve down the fees on Cardano. But can that be done without making these nodes and the blockchain making very, very big for the nodes? So is it going to be a huge cost on the decentralization and whatever? But I haven't sold my Cardano, and I'm going to be still holding into it. But they're definitely because I know Lightning Network is such a fucking mess. That makes me very skeptical about how this Hydra thing is going to be working out. But then again, like, I don't know every aspect about the development and everything, you know, around it. So there's only so much I can guess and think about based on the information that I have. So I guess we have to wait and see how it goes. But it's going to be a rough time ahead of Cardano, in my opinion, based on what I've explained to you here in this video. And obviously, as I showed, Cardano needs users, and Cardano needs more dApps, and hopefully this new language is going to be bringing them in. Otherwise, it might become this pseudo ghost chain. But yeah, thanks for watching. I will be seeing you in the next video. Cheers.